Hi friends, Prepared Suburbanite right back at you. I did a video yesterday, or put it up yesterday, where I was talking about the hurricane that's getting ready to hit the east coast of the United States. Probably going to be hitting somewhere between Myrtle Beach and Hatteras maybe in North Carolina. And I inadvertently got Francis stuck in my head. The hurricane's name is Florence, so I'll apologize to my viewers that got a little confused about that. But I did, during that video, mentioned that a local news reporter went out to a number of different supermarkets and Walmarts and places like that, looking to see what kind of inventory they had for water, bottled water, and bread and eggs and stuff like that. And I had the occasion to go to the grocery store today, and I want to show you what I found. So stick around. So our first stop was the local Harris Teeter, which is where we've been frequently spending most of our grocery budgeted dollars, and stopped in there, and my wife picked up some vegetables and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We picked up some adult beverages. I picked up a case of beer, and she picked up a couple bottles of wine just so we'd have a little bit extra in case we lose out over the next few days when this crazy hurricane decides it's actually going to hit the shores. So we'll see what happens there. But I was at the Harris Teeter, and we took a look very specifically at the aisle where they normally have the bottled water, and they usually carry quite a bit of it. And you can see from the pictures that it's pretty well picked dry. Both sides of the aisle, not only just the bottled water, but some of the flavored waters and stuff that were over on the other side of the aisle. I made my way down to the egg case. It was refrigerated, and while there was still a few dozen eggs in the cartons there, about 75% of their normal inventory had already been picked over. We got there about noontime today. And then I took a trip back over to the bread aisle and decided that it would be a good idea to see what kind of bread they had. And you can see by the pictures that are flashing in front of you here that all of a sudden there's very little bread at all at the Harris Teeter Food Mart. My wife was looking for something very specific, couldn't find it at Harris Teeter. So we drove half a mile down the road to the local Food Lion, and I got my little iPhone camera tuned up and went out and decided that it would be a good idea to see what the inventories were at the local Food Lion. And let me tell you, it was picked over bare. It was just absolutely amazing to see not only the aisle where the bottled water normally is, that was totally empty. The bread was picked over pretty much but clean. They did have a few bottles of milk left. There was probably a half a dozen gallons and a few half gallons here and there, a couple of quarts that were still left. So they had a little bit of that, and they did have a few eggs. So we're pretty good there. So it does look like folks are really starting to get the message. Been monitoring the local news, been monitoring kind of what's going on in the neighborhood, and a lot of people are really on edge. Our church has already gone out and made the announcements about what may or may not be scheduled on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday upcoming. And so it's pretty rough. The local colleges, NC State, University of North Carolina have already begun canceling classes. There's been a full evacuation order given for the coastal regions from Wilmington on up to Hatteras. So those folks are all leaving. He had a friend stop by today. He said that his wife was heading out from Wake County, she was heading out to the coast to make sure that their boat that was on the ocean was battened down and tied down pretty good, and realized that she probably ought to top off the old gas tank in the pickup truck, and there was no gas to be found anywhere around Wilmington area. On the way back, after checking on the boat, on the way back she was able to find maybe an hour's drive outside of Wilmington, was able to find a place where they had one pump open, and she topped off there before she made the way back home. So it's pretty rough, but there's a couple of things that I think I really wanted to get a little bit more specific about. Your hurricane preps. One of the things that I do believe is truly going to happen is we're going to lose power. There's going to be a lot of rain. There's going to be a lot of loose trees. There's going to be a ton of wind. And limbs, trees, all that going to be falling down, knocking out power. So I expect we're going to be without power. Thankfully, a couple of years ago, we invested in a full house generator, 20,000 kilowatt hour generator from Generac. Haven't had a single complaint. Have had to use it a couple of times during the winter when we would lose power. But other than that, it's pretty much just on standby. But we've got it there. I'm not too awful concerned that we're going to be dealing without power during this crazy period, but just in case, wanted to make sure that everything was okay. So opened up the box, dusted it out, made sure it runs on a weekly schedule. Every Monday morning around 10 a.m. it goes through a self-check. It starts up, runs for 10 minutes or so, and then shuts back down. And I can go look at the readings and make sure that everything is the way it should be. I just checked it. Everything's just hunky-dory with that. Flashlights, batteries, and lanterns. Got to make sure you know where they are. You got to make sure that you can that you've got your batteries where you know where they are. Batteries don't last forever. In fact, if you've been having a couple of D cells and an old flashlight sitting around for 6 months to a year, chances are they're going to start getting a little moldy. So you're going to want to change them out. But just make sure you know where they are. Make sure you know where the extra batteries are for them, because you're going to need that extra bit of light. For cooking, and you got to be careful with this, we've got a Coleman stove, a camp style stove. I've got enough the little propane bottles, and I've got enough extra propane in the big tanks and the connections to hook up to that stove. So we've got a really good alternate source of cooking should we need to do that. If we truly lose power and the generator fails us, I've got a way that we can cook. I've got a gas grill out here. Tank's about half full right now, and I got a backup tank out in the shed. So we're pretty good there. That doesn't really give me too much of a concern. The camp stove, Coleman camp stove, it's highly recommended that you do not run them indoors. I suspect that they're going to be generating some carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide or whatever it is that's so bad for everybody. But if you can, at least take it out into your garage, your carport, out into the driveway, someplace where you can assure that it's going to not get rained on, because it's just supposed to rain all the way from like Friday morning, maybe late Thursday night, Friday morning, all the way through until late Sunday night or even Monday. So there's going to be a lot of rain. But make sure that if you're going to be using a propane stove, make sure you got it vented properly and that you're using it outdoors. Don't try to do it in your kitchen. If you're in those areas that are prone to evacuation, and I mentioned a little bit earlier that the governor has already ordered mandated evacuations for certain of the counties and certain of the areas that are along the coast. If you're going to be affected by that, or if you have a chance that you may have to be evacuated from where you live, if you're in a flood zone, if you're in a low-lying area, doesn't really matter, but you may have to pack up and go. Do you have everything you need ready to go? Is your car filled up with gas, and are you ready to go with that? Have you got your go bag in there? Get out of Dodge kind of a bag where you've got some food, you got some water, you got a change of clothes, you got important papers with you, birth certificates, copies of driver's licenses, and you've got a little bit extra cash on you. We stopped on the way back from the supermarket this afternoon and stopped at the money machine and withdrew a couple of bucks so that we'd have a little bit of extra. Now, we generally have enough cash floating around the house and safe areas and this and that, but we just wanted to make sure we had a extra couple of $100 just in case something came up. If we don't spend it, it can go right back in the savings account. So it doesn't really much matter. Do you have a plan on where you're going to go? If you're gonna have to be evacuated, and you're part of that mandatory out there on the outlying counties, do you have a place to go? Friends, relatives, places inland that you know about, hotels, motels, that kind of stuff, or even a second home, your cottage on the lake, or a bug out camp that you've got, someplace where you can get away, where it's going to be safe. But you should know the routes to get there. You should know alternate routes to get there so that you know where you're going and you can get there in the shortest time possible. What are you going to take? Well, your go bag, and the go bag needs to be filled with food, enough to get you for at least 3 days, maybe more. Don't forget about your dog. Don't forget about your cat. Don't forget that they're going to need food, water, that kind of stuff. So make sure that you've got preparations for your pets. If you love your dog, if you love your cat, make sure that you include their preps in your plan. You may want to take a change of clothing, an extra pair of socks, raincoats, hats, that kind of a thing, just to make sure that you can stay as dry as you can. Extra pair of shoes or boots, waterproof would be great. And like I said, your important papers. You want to make sure if you put them on a flash drive, stick them in your pocket, make photocopies of them, put them in a weather-tight sealed Ziploc bag, something like that. But you may need to do that. I know that there have been certain occasions where people have been ordered to evacuate from their homes, from their properties, and then in order to get back in, they had to show that they actually lived there. So with a copy of your driver's license, maybe a deed to your house, your last tax bill, those kinds of things that you can show the authorities so that you can get back to your house and begin the recovery project if you do get hit. As I showed in the stills that I took during the day today, water was the biggest thing. It was just totally gone. There was no bottled water that we could find in our local supermarkets. So make sure you've got a way to have potable water. And I don't care if you got to dump out empty cans, empty plastic jugs, 55-gallon pails that you've scrubbed out, and go fill them up in the sink or in the bathroom or in the bathtub. Fill up your bathtub with water. so that you can use it. Maybe if you're on a septic system, that you can use it to flush toilets, that you can use it to boil. Make sure you've got a way that you can filter and purify water. It's going to be very important. I expect the more I hear about this storm, Hurricane Florence, she's on her way, and she's going to be a biggie. They're expecting at least a Cat 4 when she hits the coast. By the time she gets inland a little bit into where I live in the central area, that there will be winds that will be averaging 30 to 50 miles an hour in that range. We're expecting to get at least 10 to 12 inches of rain over this weekend period, from starting on late Thursday night going all the way through until possibly Monday. There's going to be a lot of damage. There's going to be a lot of folks wondering what just hit. It's time to be prepared. It's always time to be prepared, but make sure you've got your inventory list checked off and you know what you got. This is the Prepared Suburbanite reminding you to be prepared always, and I'll see you on the next video.